The 2020 thing, I mean, if I'm being honest about it, and I don't know how much of this, I got pretty frustrated with a number of my white friends. Like, you know what I'm saying?
I think a lot of Black people had that experience, right?
Yeah.
We were talking about music before the break, and there was a song I wanted to ask you about in particular that I believe you released on Juneteenth last year, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chapter 319.
Yes, Chapter 319. We're fresh into 2021, so it still feels like this has been one long 2020, if you will, right? But last year in particular, very tumultuous for a lot of reasons, between the murders of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. Obviously, we're in a pandemic. When you released the song on Juneteenth, like, what was the significance of that, and what did that mean to you?
Well, I think this is with my band Clipping, and we, LA was on lockdown, but people had started going out and marching, and this is on the back of George Floyd's murder, and it was a really interesting moment for me. I kind of actually just like walked away from my social media for a while because I kept getting all these DMs from everybody about like, you have to say something, you have to say something, you have to say something. And I was furious at the whole world, and particularly at the people in my DMs being like, I don't know really what else to say. Like, this actually feels the same as my whole life up to this point, and it is not less tragic, but it is, because you feel it for the first time. Say like, I wrote a movie about, I spent 10 years making Blind Spotting to say this exact same thing. Clipping actually put out a song right after the Ferguson events happened, that we ended up re-releasing with Chapter 319, just to also be like, and this is the same as this. Like, it's a continuum of devaluing of Black bodies in this country, and so this idea that I should feel different now felt really offensive to me. But Bill actually he like hit us up and was like, we should do something to be played at marches. Like, there's just, people are walking, and like, you need music to walk by. And like, fuck Donald Trump is getting played every 30 seconds, and that's great. Like, we all agree with that, but like, there could be more. And that, I understood that. And then, so we sort of launched into our particular Clipping way of working on things, which is like, okay, we know it's marching, so we're gonna need like beats on it. We're gonna need heavy drums on all 4 beats. And then what are we gonna do? We found some of Floyd's own songs. He's a member of the Screwed Up Clique. People don't really talk about that, but George Floyd was a rapper in Texas. And there are tapes of his, so we found like clips of him to sort of sample and base the stuff off of. And and then constructed a song that is actually for Clipping. I don't speak in the first person in that band ever. And this one I use a lot of we statements, because we felt like, well, the difference about right now is like, there is a even if it's not a singular first person, this is the viewpoint of this group right now. So it's a little less obtuse than a lot of the things that we make. It was very pointed, and it felt good to make, and it felt good that people found it useful. I know, like, I'm not on TikTok, so I don't really know, but like, it turned into a TikTok meme for some young folks, and I thought that was actually my favorite part of it, was that, because being an artist sometimes feels pretty self-serving. You don't know what is useful for people. Sometimes you don't always get that kind of feedback about something. And for me, when I make a piece of music, if somebody takes it and uses it actually in their lives and they find themselves in it, that to me is always pretty cool. Particularly making music, sometimes that feels like you just ball something. You work really hard in the thing, and then you like roll it up into a ball and you throw it into the internet, and then that's it. It's just sort of, that's what happens. But with that one, to get all this feedback back in the form of like other people using it for their own art, I that was good, and it seemed like it gave people a way to focus and coalesce a lot of the things that they were thinking. Sometimes that's the best you can hope for as an artist, right? Is to like be able to crystallize a moment enough that somebody else can point at it and say, that is how I feel. Because we all have trouble expressing how we feel sometimes. So if you can look at a piece of art and say, see this, when you ask me how I feel, look at this thing or listen to this thing, you know?
Well, I'm glad that you said a moment ago that when people were asking you during these tragedies how you felt, and you said that it felt the same to you, and I know what you mean by that, because for most Black people, when this happens, this is not a new experience for us. This is an extension of numerous experiences that we have had to live through in some fashion or some form. You know, as someone who had to live through the Oscar Grant experience, and for those who, you know, maybe that name doesn't ring a bell, but Oscar Grant murdered in Oakland. There's an entire movie about it, Fruitvale Station, which Michael B. Jordan stars in, and was directed by Ryan Coogler, who of course went on to do Black Panther. You know, with that in your backdrop, as well as your own experiences with the police, what did everything that happened in 2020 feel like for you? Even though it was the same, but how was it different though, because of how we had to experience this?
It was just exhausting for the most part. I mean, I think, you know, Oscar Grant, we were so sure, particularly in the Bay, like we were so sure that was going to change everything, because there were 100 different angles on cell phones of Officer Meserly shooting a kid in the back when he was handcuffed. Like he was lying face down, handcuffed, and the whole world watched a police officer just shoot him in the back for no reason. And nothing happened. Nothing happened. We were, you know, and Oakland caught on fire. We rioted, you know, and then the verdict came down and he wasn't penalized for the thing. And we rioted again, you know, and nothing happened. And so everything from that moment on, I talk about January 1st, 2009 a lot. I was living 4 blocks away from Fruitvale BART Station at the time. So there is like a before that moment and an after that moment for me. And like, I am so exhausted after that because I knew that was the turning point and it wasn't. And then we just watch it keep happening again and again and again. And so the 2020 thing, I mean, if I'm being honest about it, and I don't know how much of this, I got pretty frustrated with a number of my white friends. Like, you know what I'm saying?
I think a lot of Black people had that experience, right?
Yeah, with the check-ins and you know, and the texts and the oh, sorry, did I lose you? Oh, there you go.
No.
Okay. Just there was a ton of really feeling for you right now, like, hope you're good. And I was like, where were you yesterday, bro? Like, America was America yesterday too. So I don't know. It took me a while to get over it, which is why I try not to tweet in anger or like, you know, because I know that I'm missing the nuance at that point. I pride myself in being able to identify nuance in a situation. And so like when I am angry, I try to step away from those things. But I got pretty frustrated during that point and wrote some really angry stuff that I'll never put out either, I think, because it is mostly just angry and venting. And not that it's not good. Actually, I'm proud of it. I listen to some of it sometimes, but I don't know what it's for other than the anger of it. And I don't know that it's useful for anybody. But it was definitely a time for me that I've never really felt like that before. That so frustrated and so wanting to be left alone. You know, that's not usually my vibe.
Well, I mean, but I can understand it though. I think all of us can kind of relate to that.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, at least the perception, the depiction was that 2020 was a different kind of racial conversation. Did you find that to be true?
The one part of it that I found to be true was there was what I eventually saw a fair amount of, and it doesn't feel like it's lasted to me, but also hopefully I'm not involved in these conversations, was what I saw that felt different from before was a lot of white people being like, actually, we should get our shit together. You know, after finally like texting me enough times or like having other friends come to, and I just didn't respond, but having like somebody came to somebody and was like, hey, this is a y'all thing and you should figure this out. And then I watched some of my friends do that. And so, you know, so maybe those spaces still exist. It doesn't feel like they do. But that also might be colored by the fact that there was just a siege on the Capitol, so by a bunch of Trump supporters. So who knows? You know, like I don't know. I don't feel particularly hopeful for change because that feels like a shame on me type thing. You know what I'm saying? Like that is a defense mechanism, I think, more than anything else. But that part of the conversation, at least for while I was privy to it, was interesting to me and something that I hadn't heard before.